Oral health is so important to our systemic health. One example of this is creation of nitric oxide. There's two pathways that we can create nitric oxide. One is by the endothelium. The cells that line our blood vessels can make nitric oxide, and that dilates the blood vessels because it relaxes the smooth muscle, and that will decrease the blood pressure. There's another pathway called the enterosalivary pathway that I want to discuss with you here. This is important because as we age, we don't do as well making the nitric oxide from the blood vessels, so we have to really facilitate this other pathway. So how can we increase nitric oxide? We have bacteria in our mouth. See, we don't have the enzyme that can take nitrates from the environment, from food, and convert it into nitric oxide. We rely on some bacteria, and they're primarily at the back of our tongue. And these bacteria, they're facultative aerobes, which mean that they prefer oxygen, but if oxygen is not as available, it'll use nitrogen to metabolize and make its food. So green leafy vegetables, these are a great source of nitrates. Beets are also a great source of nitrates. When we consume these nitrates, we digest them, they'll go into our intestines and get absorbed, and then they'll come up and deposit into our salivary glands of all places. And then when you salivate, every time you swallow the saliva, if you have nitrogen reducing bacteria, it will convert the nitrates that come in the green leafy vegetables and beets into nitrites, which is one step closer to nitric oxide. So once it's nitrite and we swallow it, the low pH in our stomach, the real acidic environment, can take that nitrite and convert it to that last step of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is, once it's produced, it's transient. It's only there for like a second or two and then it goes away. So we need a continuous production of it to maintain a low blood pressure. And blood pressure is so important. We'll get into that in a minute, but if we can get this converted to nitric oxide and make it continuous, then this is going to benefit us in many ways. So what else can we do? Try to avoid mouthwash. Nathan Bryan does a lot of research on this, and he's also written a book. I've read his research, I've read his book. It's pretty convincing. He's against mouthwash. And his research, he did it at a dental school in Houston. When they for 2 weeks they took chlorhexidine mouthwash, and their blood pressure went up. It went up like 12 millimeters of mercury, just from killing the bacteria at the base of the tongue that are nitrogen reducers for us. So, and it only took like 4 days to repopulate them. So, unless your dentist is telling you to take a mouthwash for a specific reason, I wouldn't just take it. It's going to increase your blood pressure. Breathing through the nose. You really want to breathe through your nose because it's a better environment for your bacteria. We don't want oral dysbiosis. We want good bacteria in our mouth. When you're a mouth breather, you have all this oxygen, and it also makes a more acidic environment. A lot of the karyogenic bacteria and bacteria that can lead to periodontitis and gingivitis, they thrive in acidic environments, and so we want to breathe through our nose to avoid that type of environment. So also, if you're a mouth breather, there's always this constant oxygen in your mouth, and we know that these nitrogen reducing bacteria are facultative aerobes, so they would rather have the oxygen. If your mouth's closed and you're breathing, the oxygen's not as available, and they'll resort to actually taking the nitrates that are in the saliva and metabolizing those, because that's what they'll use when oxygen's not available. So that's a big reason why you want to breathe through your nose. Tongue scraping. I have a tongue scraper right here. So at the back of our tongue, we have papillae. They're like little mini mushrooms, and there's a biofilm over it. If you take this and you go to the base of your tongue and you scrape forward, you can see a lot of that biofilm come off. And I'll just do like 3 or 4 of these till it kind of goes away. Once a day is part of my oral hygiene. And what it does is it just kind of takes away that biofilm, opens up, these nitrogen reducing bacteria kind of deep into those papillae, and so it exposes them to the nitrogen better. And so tongue scraping can help facilitate the good bacteria and the metabolism that they do. Avoiding PPIs, proton pump inhibitors. This includes omeprazole, which is Prilosec. Some other trade names you may have heard of are Nexium, Prevacid, Protonix. If you take these, your pH in your blood or your pH in your stomach may go up above 4, and now you can't take the nitrites to make them nitric oxide. It has to be acidic. And so there's a study that showed that people who take PPIs consistently for 3 to 5 years have a 40% increase in heart attacks, strokes, and Alzheimer's disease. With all three of these etiologies or causes being very similar, if your blood pressure's high, it increases atherosclerotic plaques in your vessels, and that can lead to a heart attack. It can lead to a stroke, and there's even research showing the vascular component to Alzheimer's disease. So this is really important to avoid these. Again, if your doctor has you on these for a specific reason for a short time, go for it, but try to get off of them if you can, because it'll increase your blood pressure being on these medications. So I hope this helped give you some ideas on some things that you could do to improve your oral health, to overall help your blood pressure. Because high blood pressure is called the silent killer. It's in the background, we don't feel it. It's causing these atherosclerotic plaques that just wreak havoc, and a lot of the things that can kill you on the spot. The number one killer, cardiovascular disease, strokes up there, Alzheimer's disease is jumping up there, all these that we just discussed. So it's very important to be intentional about your oral health.